IVM.
TFG Football is an IVM production, and you can also check out their other awesome shows like The Seen and the Unseen, hosted by Amit Verma, where he discusses topics related to economic policies and its impact on our society.
You're listening to TFG Football.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of TFG Indian Football Podcast. This is episode number 290 that we're talking about. And something strange has happened. This is Chiranjeet. I'm in the studio. Usually I'm on the phone, but this time I'm hosting the show from the studio. And who's joining me on the phone? It's Kevin. What's happening, Kevin?
Hello. Chiranjeet, I like this role reversal. Always taking your place and being on the go. And today you're the one who's in one place, and I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, as the job requires, we have to step up to the plate. But it's funny you talked about role reversals. It's like everything is going upside down in Indian football this season, and once again it's centered around Kolkata. And it's funny because so much happened this week. Sandesh Jhingan rejected a big offer from 80k to stay at Kerala Blasters. Gokulam Kerala FC went ahead and signed Antonio freaking German, of all people. Albert Roca is saying he's going to leave Bengaluru FC. Usually on a normal week, these are the big stories that we elaborate upon and we talk in depth for an episode. But so much else has also been happening is that those stories seem a little bit smaller in comparison. And it's a bit confusing for me sitting here. I don't know what today's episode is ultimately going to turn out to be about as I speak here. It may be about football, it may be about politics, it may be about social structure, some history thrown in. It's just a hodgepodge, as you expect Kolkata football to be. And once again, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan is at the center core of it. But thankfully, we don't have to go to it immediately because something purely footballing has also happened. India has been drawn into a very tough group. I won't say...
Will you call it tough already?
I will call it tough because it was always going to be tough. It's not the toughest that we could have had. It's not the easiest that we could have had. But what do you think of that grouping? Bahrain and UAE hosts and Thailand. What do you think of this?
Oh my God. This going by, the names of these teams, these countries, it really, sounds as, it's a fair draw. I wouldn't say, because it's easy for us to become a weak side against the strongest team, and we can, it can also turn vice versa, because on any given day, the team which stands up on that day is going to be taking all 3 points. And again, it's not just about, it's not a knockout stage that we should be worrying about. It's a league match, and even if you talk about UAE, being one of the strongest contenders there, they finished third in the last edition of the Asian Cup. So we really have to be wary about it, and we cannot be just putting ourselves down just because it was a tournament where India didn't participate. And here we have a team called as Thailand, just going by the rankings. We've played them over time, but we've not had the best of results against either of the three teams. So that just, it's an open group, I would say. Fair, because you can't call it strong, you can't call it weak, because it's on that given day how a team performs. And India, just judging by the last year that we've had, I think we can be a good contender to at least finish second or third, if not the last in the group.
Yeah, we are definitely a contender to finish last in the group. But you've said whichever team is going to be better on that day is going to take it. I accept that in terms of playing Thailand. Okay, and Thailand is obviously our best chance, although we haven't had the best of performance against them in the past, and they are way ahead of us in terms of having a good domestic league, having a good investment in the national team and performance in the international stage. But it's the first game, right? Every time we go on a tough tournament, the first game is when you expect a little bit of stage fright, some jitters. It's a relatively young squad who have never played in Asian Cup before. We're playing after 8 years, of course. We missed out on the last one. And is the very first game is the one where we actually have a chance to get 3 points. And it's fair to say that if we don't win that game, we're done. Like, we're not going to go out and beat Bahrain or UAE, especially in their own home country. So it's a bit harsh for us to go through that test, and it's going to be a real test of character for the players to just immediately deliver. You can't have a warm-up situation, isn't it?
Yeah. So here we have a situation where we talk about prior experience at this stage. So we do not have anyone apart from Sunil Chetri and obviously Subrata Paul if he is going to be picked. Apart from that, we don't think was even. So these are the only two players who've been through that.
Absolutely.
So we require more of them, but it's not going to be possible at this time. You can't really get in players who participated in their last tournament, who got that, who are 30 plus and still kicking. And Sunil Chetri and Subrata Paul are the two leaders that we can look up to going into this game. But this is where everything comes. And also talking about players playing at that level, even at the club level. So India as a country haven't gone to that stage too many times. But even if you look at clubs playing at the highest level in Asia, we are long away from that position, and that is what is going to be hurting us. If we really don't have the competition experience of playing against the best in Asia at the club level, it becomes very much more challenging at the country level as well.
Yeah, and one particular fact about the clubs, usually doing well in Asian stage or Asian Cup, it's signified by how many West Asian teams you beat, whether it's at a club level or it's at a national team level. We haven't beaten any West Asian club since the last time we played Asian Cup. And last time's Asian Cup was a culmination of efforts. Like, the team stayed together for 7 months. They went on exposure tours, played tournaments, had different kinds of preparations, and it all led up and amounted to 0. We got 0 points out of it, and that's what I think tells you that's the reason we can't get those players back or somebody with experience back, because they were not thinking about tomorrow. Everybody, all the best experienced players built up to it, and they gave all out. They gave everything at that 2011 Asian Cup. You can't say like they didn't try. They literally tried their hearts and kidneys and lungs out. It didn't work, and that tragedy, I think, stayed with us. I think Sunil Chetri bears that. I think Subrata Paul also bears that. He earned that nickname of the Spider-Man in that tournament, but that was in a game where he conceded 4 goals against Australia. So it's a scar, I think, in terms of their playing experience. Maybe they will learn something from it and impart it to the juniors, or it can turn out badly where the scars are borne by these junior players for the next 5-6 years, and that's not going to turn out well for us.
Yeah. Going back to the point that where we, at least Stephen Constant can boast about the debuts being given to so many players. It's not going to be helping at this stage.
Yeah.
It looks good on the CV, it looks good on a statistics, but at the world stage, I think experience is what matters most. And going through that pressure, that high pressure game, once in 4 years you enter a tournament and you miss out on the last one. So this becomes even more challenging for the younger players because they're not used to that pressure. And even if you talk about your domestic league, it's not really going strong. When you have a lesser number of teams over the years, it just reduces the number of games that you play at the highest level in your own country. So that really it doesn't bring your level of playing time up to the standard that we are entering in this tournament.
Exactly. Just as an example, Thailand, the team that we think we can beat, maybe, they have 20 clubs in their league, and they play 38 games. Each team plays 38 games just in the league, plus they have cups and everything else. We have 2 leagues and everybody plays 18 games per season. So a player plays significantly less amount of football every season, and still we don't really play more national team games than Thailand does at this point, really. So
And you have
yeah,
Thailand being invited as a friendly nation to play, matches or practices, and it's the other way around. We've got to invite We've got to invite teams coming in, some of the countries never heard of before,
yeah.
and that's the situation because we are not playing enough. And only when you play enough, you get to your level of experience increase, and you have a better chance of facing pressure at the higher situation.
Yeah, and part of the equation is also earned respect. In football, that's a big deal. It's not like IPL ki acha chalo Kolkata versus Mumbai hai, so everybody get hyped. There's a movie star or some famous cricketers playing. It's if you want a friendly against a good team, you have to show that you have beaten some good teams, right? In the past, Thailand have done that. India haven't really done that since Puerto Rico, and got that win against Myanmar away from home. Since then, not a big deal. Myanmar is not here. Myanmar is not an Asian Cup level team. Who have we beat in the last few years? Who's in the Asian Cup? It's Kyrgyzstan is the only team that I can name who's in the Asian Cup. That we have beat in the last 12 months. So it's not a big resume that we can make up. Maybe, and this is where the intercontinentals become so important. We have New Zealand coming over. We have South Africa coming over. Chinese Taipei is not that big of a name, but if we do well against South Africa, maybe that lets us score some friendlies against some other teams. Because otherwise we're just gonna get non-Asian Cup level teams. And it's a vicious cycle that continues until we break it, and maybe intercontinentals, maybe Asian Cup is the platform to break it. But just go with your guts here, Kevin. Can we win a game?
No, that's a question, but it's more of a it's a mirror. It's not even a question. That are we fit enough to compete at this level with the best? I think our preparation is way behind from even considering a win.
Yeah, I mean, we have had Constantine talking about fitness level of the players after they play in ISL I League. It's way down, and every time he convenes a camp after a long while, he puts a lot of emphasis on regaining that cardio level or that stamina. It's just, you look at Thailand team, you look at Bahrain, you look at UAE, everybody will outrun us hands down. It's even if we have a chance against Thailand, we're saying that on the basis of some individual talent. Maybe Eugenson, maybe JJ, maybe Sunil Chetri delivers, maybe Gurpreet has a superhuman night and saves all the shots. A kind of win that we got against Kyrgyzstan in Kantirawa. That's what we're hoping for in the end, isn't it?
Yeah. That's correct. No, when you look at the strengths in your team, it really doesn't match up to a winning team. I can still imagine a draw with Bahrain, but that draw will have one-sided statistics. You have countless shots on goal or on Gurpreet's goal, and you have every shot being saved. And on the other hand, you probably have some top class defending from Jingan and Anas to get that goalless draw. Apart from that, I don't see a fighting. I don't see an equal level of performance to get in the points that we want to. It's probably going to be that day where the opposition has the worst luck, and India has that mighty luck factor favoring them, and probably you get in 1 point. It might just be ending up India seeing as one of the best third place team.
Yeah, so that again brings
that
in
is
that luck
only
factor.
Hope. Yeah, that is your only hope.
Again, that's a luck factor. That's going to go on goal difference, because I don't see India finishing top 2. I mean, sorry guys, I just don't see it. Just being honest out here, it's just does not look good for India at this moment. But hopefully something will happen. Maybe if anybody can change our mind, it's our players. Maybe we do well against South Africa. Maybe if we get a draw against South Africa, maybe that changes our minds. Then everything just starts falling into place. Maybe we are just about to see a rise that will happen over the next few months. Not the calculated targeted rise in rankings that we saw. It's an actual rise in performance levels. How much of a chance do you think there is of that happening?
It's all down to the preparation. Intercontinental Championship is one part of the preparation. The camp will be another part. If I'm able to replicate, we can obviously play in the conditions that come January we will be facing in UAE. That is going to be a tough weather conditions to face for any country, and especially India, who've not been playing too many international matches. That's going to be a big ask. And again, the Intercontinental Championship happening in our own nation, so that really doesn't add to the difficulty factor. So getting that preparation right, the camp right, probably play another friendly going into the tournament will be of big help.
Yeah, I think they need to pull a 2011 again, because see, the league season gets over. Get them back together in we're gonna get them back together for June, and don't separate them. Like June we have the Champions Cup, Intercontinentals. Then we're gonna take a break probably for the World Cup, but make it a 3-week break. Get them back in, prepare for the SAF Championship. At this point, the SAF Championship honestly seems like a liability, because we're again gonna play against teams that are lesser than Asian Cup. Maybe that's a good opportunity for player rotation. But till the end, after that SAF Championship ends, we need a friendly or two before the players go away for their league season. It's an opportunity for us to have a 3-month-long window where we keep the national team together. Let's see if they take it. We will bring you more updates on this as the situation progresses and we get closer and closer to the big tournament that we've all been building up towards for years, the Asian Cup. Right now, it's time for a short break. On the other side, it's the dreaded topic that I'm still not sure I want to talk in detail. It's what's happening at East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. Stay tuned.
Yeah. It's IVM here. Let's go. We the IVM kids on the block over here. Just to talk, taking a break from producing all day, coming on this podcast cause we got stuff to say. IVM Daily is the name of the show. Monday to Friday, we ready to go. Talking about stuff in our head. We might even talk about our favorite bread. Signing out, it's IVM here, the podcast network that's in your ear.
Catch IVM Daily, Monday to Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back here, and you heard the break. IVM podcast people do a really good job of putting together really interesting adverts. I sometimes that's the most enjoyable part of the episode. That ad break that happens in the middle. But some people who are just desperately not creative and lack that critical ability of thinking creatively, thinking ahead, looking ahead to the future, and preparing for the future. I'm talking about these club officials, man. These East Bengal and Mohun Bagan club officials, and I'm speaking of this with pain. There's no sarcasm here. There's no animosity here. It's just I'm saying as a fan, how long we're gonna see this drama? How long we're gonna see this abominable unprofessionalism unfold in front of our own eyes? And that is nothing but a source of shame at this point. There is an amount of pride that I take, and sorry Kevin if I'm going on a little bit of a emotional monologue here, but there's a little bit of pride that I take that East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, especially Mohun Bagan, is not just owned by somebody, is not owned by a corporate entity, that there is a amount of democracy here, that people vote in whoever runs the club and that decides who's which direction the club is going to be in. But it's so obvious at this point that the system is no longer working. It's been corrupted from within. It's been corrupted by people who want to stay in power, who take social equity out of being in power at East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. And this might be a little bit hard to understand for people who don't follow these two clubs very keenly. That what does it mean that a club is going to have an election and that's going to have big ramifications. That's because, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan are social forces in West Bengal, right? You have the dynamic happening that the refugees who came in from Bangladesh after the partition, who mostly support East Bengal, and the people who were already, native to that part of the land, that part of Bengal, they mostly support Mohun Bagan. There is a clear social division on that line. And when you have these social divisions, of course, political parties use it. There is there's still some people who don't want to marry their children to the other side, like the Ghoti and the Bangal. Ghoti, of course, being Mohun Bagan, Bangal being East Bengal. And when you have two clubs which represents this divide, this semi-animosity that or that passive-aggressive interaction that still happens in the tea stalls or inside an office or on the road when somebody just identifies somebody's accent and thinks, okay, you're from that side, so you're not the same as me. It's a dark side of Bengali society, but for better or for worse, these two clubs have embodied them. And also, although while there are lots of Bangals who support Mohun Bagan and lots of Ghotis who support East Bengal and lots of non-Bengalis who support either club, the clubs have these social elements in their identity. And when that happens, since this is a politically charged issue, of course you're going to have political intervention happening within these clubs, especially because we have a semi-democratic system where the members vote to decide who runs the club. So if you're thinking about Bengali society, or especially the elite society in Kolkata, if you're somebody who's in a position of power within East Bengal or Mohun Bagan or Mohammedan Sporting, you have a certain amount of honor or certain amount of power in the society. That's why I said the word social equity, right? You get invited to different smaller clubs who are holding their, let's say, annual functions or something. You get honored just for being associated for that club. It's a privilege, basically. It's a social privilege. And because it is that way, because, people just look at you when you are part of East Bengal and Mohun Bagan as a representative of that huge 100-year history, So since that power exists, there are people who use this power for personal gains, and they will do anything to hold on to power. This happens in East Bengal, this happens in Mohun Bagan, even in Mohammedan Sporting, but right now it's especially true for Mohun Bagan because we have two factions warring for holding on to power, and the club is probably going into elections. But again, the system is so rigged. Again, it just doesn't make sense for somebody who just genuinely loves the club and just wants to see the club go in a better direction. It just doesn't help to see the people who have run this club for so long just warring against each other just because they want a larger share of that power, And again, of course, political involvement and politics and club football in East Bengal and Mohun Bagan have gone hand in hand. So many former players stand for political parties and win, just because they were popular as players, just because they have that club name associated with them. Everybody knows, and I'm just gonna go out and say it, everybody knows East Bengal have had historically, not anymore, but during the heydays of 80s, 90s, early 2000s, East Bengal had a very intimate connection with CPIM, the former ruling party. Lots of the major leaders, like the former Chief Minister of West Bengal, Jyoti Basu, Buddhadev Bhattacharya, they were all East Bengal supporters. It's an open thing. Current Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, she comes from a Mohun Bagan supporting family. It's an open secret. Although she never comes out and says it, but she's a Mohun Bagan fan. Her entire family is. Her brother, Babun Banerjee, is a part of the executive committee of Mohun Bagan. Right? So, Mohun Bagan was mostly associated with Congress, and later a faction of that Congress party formed Trinamool Congress, and it mostly over the last 20 years, I'm saying, the equation was a little bit different if you go further back, and I'm not the most major history buff or nerd or whatever you want to call it. So if you wanna find out the whole political history of East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, there are books about it, but most of them are in Bengali. So I'm speaking to mostly a non-Bengali audience here who are just finding this out. This is a 101, because it's necessary to understand what's happening over there right now. So Tutu Bosu and Anjan Mitra have been running the club for over 2 decades together, and they have both their own followers who again work together so far. They took the power over from Dhiren De under less than ideal circumstances, but again, that is something that happened. There's no point going into the details of that. Let's come to what's happening now. Yeah, what's happening right now? What has changed in the last 30 years that has completely transformed the landscape of Indian football? ISL, no denying it. ISL has come. It's no longer just I-League. East Bengal and Mohun Bagan are no longer just the monopoly powers out there. And for the first time, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan are both facing this challenge to change. They need to become more professional. They need to become more corporatized. They need to have professional people running the clubs rather than just people who have been voted in, who just happen to be popular among some people. The stakes are much bigger. It's no longer just 5,000 members who are at stake. It's the future of the club. It's the stature of those clubs in Asian football that we're talking about. But when that happens, you have a situation where professional people will come in and run this club, but so many of the people who have been in power so long, who are not really qualified to be in that position, they will get kicked out. Whoever buys in as a sponsor will want their people on the board, on the new board. Whoever is, they will want a professional CEO and all that stuff. So people who were running the clubs so far and reaping the benefits, social, financial, and various other benefits of being part of these clubs, a lot of them will get kicked out. Yeah, and they don't want that. And this is where the split happened. Anjan Mitra and Tutu Bosu, who have been working together for decades, who have been part of the club since their childhood, basically. They've been coming to the club and growing up in the club, so to speak, and that goes back 60, 70 years. They are no longer on the same side for the first time. And that's a seismic shift, because Anjan Mitra has been part, something like, you can say, a political mind who took care of all the diplomatic and the behind the scenes stuff, negotiations with IFA, AIFF, and all that other stuff. And Tutu Basu has been the financial engine. He's been the one who's been either financing the club himself or getting sponsors. So now that these two major elements of the club who have been working together so far are now separate, you have a situation where neither is complete, and you have some officials who are siding with Anjan Mitra's side, some officials who are siding with Tutu Bosu's side, and this is all based on personal loyalty, not mostly because they want something good or some basically, to put it bluntly, most of them are not ready to sacrifice themselves to see the club progress. And by progress, I mean just shedding this old structure, get in a corporate entity who's going to take over, sell them majority shares if you have to. They can't be doing worse job than these guys have been doing, and get into ISL, because ISL is going to be the top division. And the only thing that's stopping ISL from becoming the top division is what's going on at East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. I know I'm going on a little bit too much detail, but bear with me. This is what's happening, and this is what happened on. Let's come down to contemporary stuff. This is what happened on Friday. An executive committee meeting was called at Mohun Bagan, and this was some sort of a power showdown between the Bosu faction and the Anjan Mitra faction, right? And here's what it is. Most of the people agree that Mohun Bagan should change and become more professional and join ISL. And that's the view of the Bosu faction, right? Sanjay Bose, Debashish Datta, who were major figures at the club, had resigned before. Lots of other executive members were submitting their resignation, and that has been happening over the last couple of weeks, building up to this. And majority of the executive committee members have now resigned. Right? They are no longer a part of the faction that's running the club, basically. The thing is, though, that the rules are depleted and skewed in such a way that whoever is in power gets to keep power even if they have a small amount of the executive committee still with them. Like, the math is still a little bit confusing to me, but it was basically 16-8 when the executive committee convened. 16 in favor of Bosu and 8 in favor of Anjan Mitra, right? Still, Anjan Mitra could run the club because you need just 7 executive committee members present at the table to convene a meeting, a quorum, as it is called officially. So you see why I'm saying the democratic system has failed. It's because a minority can run the club. How is it democratic if a minority faction can run the club? If the majority of the club thinks you are not fit to run the club at the moment, and Anjan Mitra, let's face it, he's old, he's no longer the agile presence that the club needs 24/7. It should be a full-time job to run Mohun Bagan, right? So it was happening. It unfolded like a drama. Early in the morning, people started convening at the club. There were police present to avoid, to prevent any scuffles or violence if it broke out. There have been some instances of violence that happened at the club in the past. They didn't want to repeat. And for us who were watching this unfold on the internet, it was a question of seeing the executive committee members coming in and finding out where they are sitting, because the Bosu faction was sitting outside in the lawn and the Mitra faction was sitting either in the veranda or in the office, and we were just looking at people coming in. Kidhar baithega? Are they going to sit in the lawn or are they going to sit in the veranda? Then we know who they are with, right? And Babun Banerjee, being the chief minister's brother, a major political presence, he was the wild card, because wherever he would sit would indicate which side has the blessing, immediate or the temporary or the current blessing of the ruling government. Babun Banerjee comes in with a bunch of his followers. Most of them, I'm pretty sure they don't have Mohun Bagan membership. I don't know what they were doing here, but he runs into the club with dozens of his own people, and he goes out and sits in the veranda. And at that moment, it becomes clear that the ruling government at that moment is probably backing Anjan Mitra. And this is all happening behind the scenes. People are calling each other and trying to figure out how to curry favor with the political parties in order to strengthen themselves within the club. Here, at this point, again, we have a minority of the club officials inside who are making decisions for the club, and majority of the officials who are sitting outside in protest, right? And still, that minority is allowed to carry on and decide the policy of the club for the time being. And why that's concerning is that Anjan Mitra is not very much in favor of joining ISL at the moment, because he sees it as a threat. He sees change as a threat to his own position. He thinks, or he probably just assumes, that if we have a professional management, there will be no place for him or the people he likes to be in a part of that management. And that's the only reason he tried to screw up the effort of merging I-League and ISL, or at least like the entering ISL through bid process that happened last season. He was the one who was spearheading this, but back then he had some of the Bosu faction officials on his side. This time he doesn't have that, but he's still holding on to the power with a minority of the management, and he's basically holding the club hostage to his own wishes. And as a fan, I just want to see the club change. I just want to see the club become better, become professional, become, there's so much that the club can do. There's a stadium. It's not that hard to develop it to become a proper, world-class arena. It's not going to take 5 years if they put their mind to it. It doesn't take much to upgrade their residential academy to make it one of the best in the country. They can do it if they want, but they haven't done it simply because they haven't gone the corporate way, which means they're always in the middle of a cash crunch, trying to, because of course they have to always make a first team that goes for the title. So all the money goes that way. So there's not much left for anything else. So always in Mohun Bagan, for the immediate results, they screw up the long term. And the long-term vision right now should be to move to ISL to become more professional. It's been a very rambling, long speech. I hope I have explained the situation and the dilemma that many people are facing as Mohun Bagan fans. And let's face it, entire Indian football is being held hostage to something like this. If East Bengal and Mohun Bagan don't change and become more professional, then we can't have the restructuring the way we want it to. We can't have East Bengal and Mohun Bagan coming over to ISL if they don't change. And as long as they don't change, we are stuck with a split league system where I-League and ISL are operating separately, and players are getting less matches, and we have this ongoing stupid debate about which league is better, rather than just wanting to see everybody play together in one league. And as much as IMG Reliance want to keep independent clubs out of ISL and keep it closed and keep the franchisee fee system intact, as much as that is detrimental to the wholesome development of Indian football, what these guys are doing at East Bengal and Mohun Bagan is equally harmful. And that's my piece. Kevin, did you get anything that I said, and what do you think of what's happening over there?
What I understand is ISL, as much as ISL needs these two Kolkata clubs, it's the other way around as well.
Yeah, so East Bengal and Mohun Bagan need to be in ISL right now. Yeah. They should have been there last year.
Yeah, right. So
just to develop the clubs, because we have seen, if as long as we leave these guys in power, they're not going to do enough to develop everything to make the club better. They just want to stay in power, which is basically a stasis, a state of stasis that they're pursuing, which is keep everything as is. And we can't have that if we want Indian football to progress, if we want the clubs to progress. The idea is to get better, not keep things as they are. And what we have is clearly not enough, right?
Yeah. So the consensus has to be, arrived sooner than later. And we know it's already been declared by the AFC that ISL will be the top division. And the earlier the official realize that it's time to take that big step towards entering ISL and making it probably that is what we will idealize it to be, a 20-team league. If that happens, and we will come at par at like many other countries in the Asian circuit that have at least 20 teams. That means 38 games in the league plus a tournament which attracts. Probably we host a tournament and get in some countries in the neighboring countries to come and participate in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look,
so it's all the long vision that everybody knows about it, but that your political ideology comes in between, and then you want to hold on to that financial power. You want to hold on to that power as a whole. That if you give away, if you just loosen up your grip on the club, what happens next may not be under your control. So that's all the dilemma that the officials are having right now. But the sooner they realize that it's for the good of the club, it's the good of one of the talked about clubs in India, and it's been so long that we know that Indian football is almost negligible if you just consider East Bengal and Mohun Bagan out of the equation. And when we are heading towards a streamlined, merged or probably restructured league, this is very essential to have a consensus of getting all the clubs of it's not just these two Kolkata clubs, it's all about the major clubs that can participate in the ISL.
Yeah, see, the only people who are holding this up at this moment, I think, are East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, because we have, I think most of the clubs are okay with playing in League One. East Bengal and Mohun Bagan don't even have to play in League One; they can play in ISL. And the thing is, although we want League and ISL to merge right now, and we should, ideally we get a 20-team league, that's just not going to happen. If that happens, that's going to happen over time as the ISL, as the top division grows and then opens up and accepts a new team just by merit. But we have to get the process started. We can't have a 20-team ISL as the unified top division unless we start with 12 or 13. And to make it 12, we need East Bengal and Mohun Bagan to step on board. And they're just playing musical chair with this club in Mohun Bagan right now, because just what happens is that how Anjan Mitra played that in the meeting, he baited some political leaders of Trinamool Congress, like some of whom are ministers in the state assembly, by naming them as potential vice presidents. And what happens afterwards? Everybody declines. He literally tried to bribe some politicians by giving them big posts in the club and get them on board so that the entire party would back him and just keep him in power. And most of them are declining. Maybe even Babu Banerjee will flip if he sees that the zeitgeist is against the Mitra faction, because frankly, everybody wants Mohun Bagan and East Bengal to change for the better. Everybody who doesn't have a vested interest in keeping the status quo, they want it to change. If it's not happening, it's because only those few people don't want a change. Only there are maybe 1,000 people, 1,000 officials in East Bengal and 1,000 officials in Mohun Bagan who don't want change, and that's why millions of supporters are being deprived of an opportunity to see their clubs evolve for the better, to have more money, to have better facilities, to garner or just harness the youth talent in West Bengal. It's just not happening because some people want to hold on to power. That's why I'm saying the democratic system that we're supposed to be so proud of in East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, it's failed us. Maybe it has failed us because the membership system has been rigged and too many blind supporters. They're colloquially known as chamchas among the football fans. Too many of those are members, so they will just always vote for the guy who basically brought them in. Maybe it's because there's just lack of foresight among the members who cannot possibly think of who cannot possibly imagine what it takes to make the club better, that they have to make some sacrifices in order to make the club change, because these guys have been in power for 20-30 years. This is the best they have done so far. It's just not going to get better than this unless we get professional help, unless we get somebody who knows what they're doing in a 21st century football environment to run the club. It's just sad to see this happening. Same story is happening in East Bengal as well, although it's not out there in the open at this moment. But seriously, man, it's just sad to see. I just don't know what else to say about this. Sum up from you, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I see again what we talked about earlier as well. It's equally important for all clubs to come streamlined into one direction for the betterment of Indian football, and it's the same for these two Kolkata clubs who actually formed a major chunk of Indian football. It's like East Bengal on one side, and you have rest of the clubs on one side. Obviously, barring Bengaluru AFC, they are on a different level. So that it makes it so important that these two clubs follow and be in line where Indian football is headed to, and it's because of a handful of people who you think that the way that the club has been run over years is the right way to do it, but we've seen that it doesn't take you anywhere. When you do get into professional way of working, just for example, it's an ideal situation that how Bengaluru FC was launched 4 years back, 5 years back, and how they are in these 5 years. It's just an example that is to be followed by these two big Kolkata clubs. And I think if that can be done in 5 years, it shouldn't take 100 years for the club to make big progress.
Yeah.
So it's all just coming down to their getting their professional help, and not taking your entire grip of the club, probably just letting it loose at some areas, and then seeing the results, and then eventually
basically letting people who know their shit run the club. That's what all it comes down to. I just ending this episode. It's been a long one. I want to make a personal appeal as a Mohun Bagan fan who's neither here nor there. I'm not a blind supporter of either faction, right? They both have their good sides and bad sides, but the club is going towards election in July, and make no mistake, what is at stake is the future of the club. Because how we act in the next 3 years is going to change the way Indian football is in the next 30 years. So it's an important vote. And if I don't care who you vote for, Mitra faction or Bosu faction, but vote for whoever who promises or vows to bring professional change. Ask whoever you're voting for, will you get a corporate entity to pick up stakes in the club and run the club in a professional manner? Will you go along with it? Will you submit the bid in the summer of 2019 and become a part of ISL? Will you put more money into youth development? Will you allow bigger sponsors who demand greater transparency to come in and help the club reach the next level? If they say yes, because all of these are critical questions, they have to say yes to all these questions. Whoever says yes, vote for them, because otherwise it's just very sad to see this. East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, especially Mohun Bagan, have been pioneers of Indian football, and they have been leading the way to change Indian football for the better. This will be a shameful period in the club's long history where we failed to step up to the plate and did the opposite of what we are supposed to be doing, what we are supposed to represent in Indian football. It's a sad and dark prospect to look at, but that's what is at stake. Thank you so much for listening to us, and it's been a pretty gloomy episode. Hopefully the next week is going to be way more cheerful and light-hearted. If you're listening to us on YouTube, do not forget to like, share, subscribe. If you are listening anywhere else, you can listen on the IVM Podcasts website or the app. You can listen to it on iTunes and any of your favorite podcasting platforms, basically. So we will be back again on Monday next week. I don't know whether I'll be in the studio or Kevin will be, but somebody will be there to bring you the latest on Indian football as we gear up towards something cheerful, the intercontinentals that are going to happen right here in Mumbai. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.
There she stands, a podcast addict, outside the bank, having travelled several miles to get in with other poor souls like her. The journey, though daunting for this youngling, will have some comfort because she has downloaded her favourite podcast. You can see more of her species on ivmpodcasts.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.